The room goes quiet before the answer arrives, and you know that kind of quiet is never empty. It is the kind that makes a chair, a window, and a late hour feel strangely aware of you. You have carried a question that no one around you has been able to name, and that is why this message reaches you with such force. Something has shifted inside you, and you have felt it in the small places before you had words for it. The title says chosen, but what you are hearing first is not an honorific, it is a summons. You are being asked to sit down, to stop circling the same worry, and to listen as if your life depends on what is said next, because in a way it does. There is a door opening here, but it does not open with noise. It opens with recognition, so stay with me because the thing you have been sensing in silence is about to be named. You have felt it in your body more than in your mind, because your mind still wants to explain away what your chest has already understood. You sit on the edge of the bed, or at the kitchen table, or in the parked car before you go inside, and something in you refuses to move fast. Your shoulders carry a weight that has not come from the room alone. Your breathing has been shallow in moments when no one has touched you, and your hands have held a phone longer than they needed to, waiting for a message that never arrives. That waiting has not been wasted time. It has exposed a hunger you could not keep burying under routine, and it has shown you where your peace has been leaking. You may have called it tiredness, but it is more precise than that. It is the strain of a soul that knows it cannot live by noise anymore. And when you hear this kind of message, the body often tells the truth before the mouth does. What is happening around you is not random, and what has been tightening inside you is not a punishment. It is a signal, and it may be the kind of signal that arrives when God is preparing to give you more than comfort, more than explanation, and more than a temporary fix. You are not being abandoned in the dark. You are being taught how to hear in the dark. There are moments when heaven does its deepest work quietly, because loud rooms would only distort the shape of what is coming. That is why this feels slower than you wanted. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. And heavier than you expected. The old interpretation says nothing is happening, so you should keep rushing. The truer interpretation says something is being formed, so you should learn to sit still long enough to receive it. By the end of this, you will recognize the sign, the pressure, the hidden resistance, and the first steps of return. You will also hear the difference between what is merely loud and what is actually leading you, and that difference is saving you. Think about the ordinary place where this has followed you most. It may be the bathroom mirror before the day starts, the car seat after a long shift, the living room after everyone else has gone to sleep, or that narrow strip of light under the door when the house is already still. The scene looks ordinary from the outside, but inside it your thoughts have been circling the same unclosed loop. You touch the sink, the steering wheel, the hem of your sleeve, and you feel the same restraint that has been asking for attention. That is not weakness. That is your inner life refusing to be treated like background noise. The room has not changed much, but your response to it has. A place that once felt neutral now feels charged with meaning because your spirit has been noticing what your schedule has ignored. In that little scene, you have been learning that peace is not the absence of tension, it is the presence of truth. And truth is starting to press through the ordinary edges of your day. You are more sensitive than the people who only see the surface, and that sensitivity has cost you because it keeps making you aware of what others can ignore. You notice tone, delay, atmosphere, and the small shift in a conversation that tells you something underneath is wrong. You notice when a smile is too quick, when a promise is too polished, when a room feels older than the furniture in it. That is not you being difficult. That is discernment being formed in you through repetition and restraint. The world often calls that kind of noticing anxiety because it does not know how to name holy unease. But you know the difference when your spirit tightens and when your body only fears what it cannot control. The pressure has made you feel separate, but separation is not always loneliness. Sometimes it is protection while you are being taught what to carry and what to leave behind. And if you have ever whispered, "Why am I like this?" the answer is not that you are broken. The answer is that you are being trained to notice what the careless cannot. What has resisted you is not only one event, but a pattern of hurry, comparison, and pressure that keeps trying to drag you back into the old rhythm. It shows up when you see other people moving faster, appearing happier, or sounding certain while you are still listening for direction. It shows up when the phone lights up and your heart jumps before your mind can settle. It shows up when someone speaks with urgency, but not truth, and you feel your chest close before you can explain why. The opposition in this season is rarely dramatic. It is often repetitive, ordinary, and exhausting. It tries to fill every silence with a lesser voice so that you never stay long enough to hear the better one. That is why the real battle has not been to force an answer. It has been to keep your attention from being stolen by what only looks urgent. And when attention is guarded, the soul can finally breathe. You have likely felt the echo of Elijah in this season, not because your life looks identical to his, but because you know what it is to stand in dryness and still be told to wait for rain. You know what it is to hear no immediate correction while the valley around you feels full of dust. You know what it is to keep showing up with a small, faithful act while your feelings keep asking for proof. Elijah did not need a storm first. He needed a word, then a posture, then a listening heart. That is the same pattern at work in you now. The answer does not always come as spectacle. Sometimes it comes as the discipline to keep your place while the weather changes slowly around you. That is why this moment is not about demanding proof from heaven. It is about recognizing the mercy already in motion. And mercy often sounds like a quiet instruction that only the waiting can hear. If you ignore what you already know, the cost is not instant collapse, but slow dilution. The same cycle keeps repeating with different faces and different dates, and you start calling that repetition normal. You become used to a kind of inner noise that makes clarity feel suspicious. You keep postponing the decision that would have made the heaviness less powerful. You tell yourself that later will be easier, but later usually carries the same fog wearing a new shirt. The danger is not that you will lose everything at once. The danger is that you will become so adapted to the wrong rhythm that peace begins to feel unfamiliar. That is why the signal matters now. It is not trying to frighten you. It is trying to rescue your attention before your soul gets trained to live numb. And numbness is one of the quietest prisons because it does not look like one at first. If any of this has landed in a place you cannot fully explain, type 888 in the comments. It is a small act, but it says that what landed in you was real and not imaginary. That little code becomes a sign that you received the confirmation instead of letting it pass through you untouched. Bring that simple agreement back into your own hands and do not dismiss how precise it feels. Type 888, and then come back to me, because what follows goes deeper than the sign. The surface has been speaking long enough now. The deeper pattern is the one we enter next. The deeper pattern is not only around you, it is inside the way you have learned to survive. You have made a habit of scanning for danger before you sit down in peace. You have made a habit of explaining yourself before anyone asks. You have made a habit of carrying the next step in your mind, as if control could become comfort. That pattern may have protected you once, but it is too heavy to lead you now. The message you are receiving is not asking you to become careless. It is asking you to stop confusing vigilance with obedience. There is a difference between wisdom and tension, and your body has been living inside the tension for too long. So the next thing God is dealing with is not your intelligence. It is your reflex to brace before you trust. And that reflex is where the real release begins. At the root of this struggle is fear of obeying before you can see the whole road. That fear often dresses itself as caution, responsibility, or maturity, but it keeps you standing still when your spirit already knows enough to move. You tell yourself that you need one more sign, one more conversation, one more day, and sometimes that is true, but sometimes it is fear wearing respectable language. You have felt it in the pause before a hard decision, in the silence after a clear conviction, and in the way your stomach tightens when the answer is simple but costly. The issue is not that you do not hear. The issue is that hearing changes you, and change asks for surrender. That is why the tug inside you has been so persistent. It is exposing where control has been masquerading as safety, and control can preserve your image while quietly draining your peace. Your mind tries to organize everything into a pattern it can manage, but your body keeps reacting before the logic finishes its speech. You sit at your desk and tell yourself nothing is wrong, yet your jaw stays tight and your shoulders stay raised. You read the message again, or replay the conversation again, and your breath shortens as if your inner world already knows the result. Sometimes the mind calls it overthinking, but the spirit calls it pressure from an unresolved place. Sometimes the body calls it exhaustion, but the spirit calls it the cost of resisting what has already been clarified. The two are not always identical, and you have had to learn that difference carefully. Not every fear is a warning, and not every calm is proof of peace. That is why discernment has to be quieter than reaction. It has to stay present long enough to hear what the body is saying without letting the body become the final authority. And in that balance you begin to recover your center. Some rooms do not fit you the way they used to, and some conversations drain you before they even begin. You notice it in a meeting where everyone is talking but no one is listening, or in a family space where one sentence always leads to old expectations, or in a message thread that leaves you more scattered than strengthened. The issue is not that every person around you is wrong. The issue is that not every environment can carry the version of you that is emerging. That is a hard truth, because it means you cannot keep entering every space with the same openness and expect the same peace. Discernment now asks you to notice where your spirit expands and where it shrinks. It asks you to watch which voices leave you clearer and which voices make you smaller. That is not suspicion, that is stewardship. And once you begin to honor the difference, you stop calling every drain a duty. The opposition has been strategic, not random. It keeps making you tired before the important thing is done, distracted before the important thing is named, and emotionally crowded before you can hear what matters. It fills the day with errands, opinions, minor urgencies, and the pressure to answer everything immediately. It tells you that if you do not move fast, you will miss something, but often what you miss is yourself. That is how confusion works. It does not usually destroy by force. It erodes by accumulation. One unnecessary worry, one delayed obedience, one tired compromise, and suddenly the whole inner room feels overfurnished. But what is being revealed now is simpler than all that noise. You do not need more clutter to prove you are alive. You need the courage to let clarity become more important than performance. And that courage is already stirring. There comes a moment when the soul stops negotiating with what it already knows. You can feel that moment in the quiet after another restless night, or in the pause before you answer a question you have answered too many times in the wrong way. You feel it when your chest refuses to keep agreeing with a path that your spirit has already outgrown. That moment does not always arrive with dramatic language. Sometimes it arrives as a plain internal sentence. This no longer fits. The room looks the same, the people look the same, but your inner posture has changed. You are no longer asking permission from the old fear. You are no longer bargaining with the old delay. Something in you has crossed a threshold, and once that happens, the next steps must be shaped by truth, not habit. And truth, once seen, will not keep pretending. For a stretch now, the metaphor has been standing beside you like a covered lamp in a dim room. It has been waiting for the cloth to be lifted without force, waiting for the light to be admitted without being forced into display. You know what it is to have something living under restraint, something real but not yet fully visible. It may be your calling, your confidence, your peace, or the part of you that has stayed faithful while everything else felt uncertain. The image is simple enough to hold and deep enough to search you. A lamp under a covering still exists, but its purpose remains muted until the covering is removed. That is what this season has felt like. Not denial, but concealment with intent. Not destruction, but waiting under measure. The scene is a room at dusk, a table, a cloth, and a small steadiness in the hand that knows it is time. And you can already feel the difference between hiding and guarding. The lamp did not become weak because it was covered. It was covered because the room was not yet ready for how clearly it would speak. There is a mercy in that, even if it did not feel merciful while you were waiting. You spent days wondering why certain doors stayed shut, why certain explanations never came, and why some people seemed comfortable with your silence while you were not. But hiddenness is not always rejection. Sometimes it is preservation. Sometimes what is being protected is not your image, but your flame. The cloth kept the wind off what was still forming, and that is why you were not allowed to force the timing. The tension was never that you lacked light. The tension was that the light was meant to emerge on its own terms, and that is very different from being ignored. What has tried to keep you covered has often come in the form of old voices that say visibility is danger. They remember rejection, embarrassment, or being misunderstood, and they try to turn those memories into rules. So the hand hesitates before lifting the cloth. The breath shortens before the room can be changed. The soul tries to stay small enough to avoid another wound. But smallness is not your forever shape. It was a temporary shelter, and you have outgrown it more than once. The opposition now is not simply outside pressure. It is the old reflex that says staying dim is safer than letting the truth be seen. But a covered lamp does not heal by remaining covered. It waits, yes, but only until the right moment of release. And you are closer to that moment than you have admitted. The lamp begins to move when the hand no longer trembles at the thought of being seen. You feel it in the way your prayers have changed, less frantic and more honest, less about proving and more about yielding. You feel it when the room seems to hold its breath with you, as if even the furniture knows something is about to change. A small shift can carry immense meaning. The cloth loosens, the edge lifts, and what was muted begins to breathe. That is what obedience often feels like at first, a gentle movement with visible consequence. Nothing explodes, nothing performs, yet the whole atmosphere changes because the light no longer hides from itself. That is the moment you have been approaching. Not spectacle but emergence, not force but release, and once light begins to emerge, it can no longer be mistaken for absence. If that image has opened in you, type the words, "I see it in the comments." Let the recognition settle where the light has already reached. This is not about decoration or habit. It is about agreeing that what you have been sensing is real enough to name. Type "I see it," then come back to me, because the lamp is no longer standing still. What follows now is movement, and movement reveals what still resists. The lamp is moving now, and what once looked fixed is no longer fixed at all. You can feel the change in the way your inner room responds to truth, almost as if a draught has entered where stale air used to sit. The cloth is not ripped away in violence. It is lifted with intention, and that matters. You are learning that some things open by force, but the things that last open by consent. The light that comes forward does not need to shout. It simply changes what can be seen. That is why this stage matters so much. It tells you that the season is not ending in confusion. It is ending in clarity, and clarity is often quieter than the waiting that preceded it. This is where the return begins to feel possible. You do not have to keep living as if every unresolved thing is evidence against you. You do not have to keep rehearsing the story that says the delay means denial. The lamp has been there the whole time, and what was hidden is now becoming visible enough for you to trust again. That shift may feel small to someone else, but you know the size of it in your chest. You know the difference between another empty promise and a real internal turning. The old pattern wants you to stay covered, because covered things do not have to answer. But the new pattern asks you to step into the light of what is true, even if your hands are still learning how to hold it. That is the bridge you are crossing now, and once you cross it, you cannot unsee the room. You have spent enough time pretending that the covering was your identity. It was only a season, and it was never the whole of you. The lamp did not become a cloth. The cloth was only ever a temporary arrangement around the lamp. That sentence matters, because the wrong season can teach you to confuse what protected you with what defined you. But what protected you is now being lifted. What kept you hidden is now being returned to sight. What once felt like hesitation is beginning to feel like holy timing. The body even knows it. Shoulders lower, jaw softens, hands unclench, and the breath grows fuller when the truth is no longer resisted. That is how return starts. It starts in the body before it becomes a decision, and the room knows it too. There is a reason this has had to be gentle. You were not being punished by slowness. You were being prepared to carry something that could not be carried well in panic. The lamp would not have helped you if it had been forced into the room before your eyes could adjust. The same light that blesses can also overwhelm if it arrives before you are ready to receive it. So the season of covering was not wasted. It was calibration. It was a mercy that trained your heart to discern brightness without fear. And now the mercy changes shape. It becomes invitation. It becomes movement. It becomes the very thing you once thought was being withheld. That is why the atmosphere around you has shifted. It is not just that something new is coming. It is that you are ready to see it. If this image has landed in a place you cannot fully explain, type the words, "I am ready," in the comments. Let that declaration confirm that you are not resisting the light anymore. It does not mean you understand everything. It means you are consenting to what is being revealed. Type "I am ready," then come back to me. The lamp is moving out of concealment, and the next step is not performance, it is response. You are being asked to respond without pretending, and that changes everything. The covered thing has begun to breathe, and the breath itself is a sign that life was never absent. It was only restrained by what could not yet hold it. Now the room has changed enough for the truth to remain visible. That means your response can be simple and real. You do not need to force a speech where a quiet yes will do. You do not need to decorate obedience so that it feels impressive. You only need to stand where the light has reached you and let it tell the truth. That is a very different kind of strength. It is the strength of a person who no longer confuses hiding with humility. And that strength is rising in you now. The first thing that changes when the lamp is uncovered is your relationship with the room itself. You start to notice details that were always there but never fully seen. The grain of the table, the shadow near the curtain, the stack of papers, the mug left from earlier, the little signs that life has been happening while you were waiting for permission to move. That is how spiritual clarity works. It does not remove your world. It lets you see it correctly. You begin to understand that your current space is not the final word on your life. It is only the stage where truth first becomes undeniable. And once you see that, the old fear starts losing its shape. The room is not trapping you. It is teaching you how to recognize what is real. You also begin to notice your own body with more honesty. The chest that was tight starts to soften when you stop arguing with the light. The throat that was guarded loosens when you stop rehearsing explanations. The hands that kept reaching for control begin to open, as if they know there is nothing left to force. These are not small details. They are evidence that your inner world is changing in response to truth. And where truth is received, peace stops being theoretical. It becomes physical. That is why you may feel both relief and trembling at once. Relief because the strain is being named. Trembling because the old covering is no longer doing all the work. Yet trembling is not failure here. It is the body learning to trust what the soul has started to accept. The opposition still whispers, of course. It says you are too late, too sensitive, too inconsistent, too unsure. It tries to convince you that because the lamp did not emerge sooner, it has somehow lost its purpose. But delay did not erase the light. It only protected it until the right moment of unveiling. The old voice wants you to interpret patience as absence. The truer voice tells you that hiddenness was a preparation, not a denial. That is the difference you are now strong enough to hear. It is not that everything was obvious all along. It is that what was obvious to heaven was being trained in you slowly. And slow revelation still counts as revelation. This is where you need to remember that obedience does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it looks like opening the curtain, speaking the honest sentence, setting the phone down, or choosing the quiet room over the noisy one. Sometimes it looks like letting your shoulders drop and refusing to pick up a burden that was never assigned to you. Sometimes it looks like noticing that a place or a relationship can no longer define your inner weather. These small acts are not small in heaven. They are the visible edge of trust. And when trust begins to move, the lamp no longer stays under the cloth. It enters the room and changes what the room can claim. There is a reason this whole message keeps returning to light and covering, because that is the shape of your season. You are not being asked to become someone else. You are being asked to stop calling the covering your identity. The lamp was always a lamp. The pause was never the purpose, and the same God who kept the flame from being harmed is the one who now tells you the room is ready enough. That truth may not fix every complication immediately, but it will make your next step honest. And honesty is where freedom begins. So keep listening, because the movement is not finished yet. The uncovered lamp is about to teach you how to live with a visible flame. If the light has already made sense to you, let your light be your amen without words. Not as a metric, not as a display, but as agreement that the truth was named correctly. In that quiet gesture, you are saying that what was hidden has started to become visible inside you too. Receive that without ceremony and come back to me. There is someone else who needs the same delivery, and their face may already be in your mind. There is someone in your life who comes to mind right now. Someone quietly tired, someone who has been carrying a posture nobody sees, someone who looks steady, but has been praying without many words. You do not need to explain the whole message to them. You only need to pass along what is being handed. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.